In the mid-1990s, amid the fond nostalgia of that decade, I found myself as an eager and inquisitive undergraduate student at a small, enchanting all-women's college nestled in the scenic landscape of the northeastern United States. My educational journey was made possible through financial aid, which also granted me the opportunity to work in the college library through a work-study position. This library held a special place in my heart, not only for its intellectual treasures, but also for the memorable encounters that awaited me there. My primary responsibility involved tending to the library's back office, where I diligently checked in books and periodicals, ensuring their proper arrangement before they embarked on journeys for binding or transfer to microfiche CDs. One of the most interesting tasks was managing the duplicate exchange program, a clever initiative that allowed our college to share its extensive collection with other institutions across the country and even internationally, thereby maximizing our resources and knowledge. The library itself was a captivating structure nestled into the gentle slopes of a hill with 3 floors cascading down. Each floor offered unique views of the surrounding beauty. The first floor, adjacent to the campus quad, buzzed with academic activity. The second floor, halfway down the hill, provided a serene sanctuary for students to immerse themselves in their studies while enjoying breathtaking views. Finally, the third floor, near the bottom of the hill, opened onto a spacious concrete terrace adorned with metal tables and chairs, overlooking a captivating municipal park. This park featured a lush meadow, a meandering stream, and graceful weeping willow trees whose branches gently swayed with the breeze. The terrace became a cherished haven for students to absorb the serenity and shade while engaging in their studies. The library's back office, where I spent numerous hours managing the duplicate exchange program, was situated on the 3rd floor, affectionately known as the terrace level. It was a relatively unremarkable room, except for its impressive collection of bound monographs from the proceedings of the New England Society for Physical Research. Although a room housing 200 bound monographs of such significance and history could easily have given rise to unsettling tales among freshmen, for 2 full years I experienced nothing unusual in that room. However, my perception took a dramatic turn one late afternoon during the early evening hours, while I was packaging an extensive shipment of science-related periodicals destined for a research station in Scotland. As I diligently went about my work, the back doors were propped open to allow dust to disperse from the room. These sturdy metal doors, fitted with small wire-reinforced windows, were held open securely by reliable props anchored to the floor. Since the weather was calm, with no wind around the building, the doors shouldn't have budged. Imagine my shock when those very doors slammed shut without any apparent reason. Instinctively, I looked outside, expecting to find a mischievous colleague playing a prank on me. To my surprise, no one was in sight. The packages I had prepared for shipment remained undisturbed on the loading dock. A chill ran down my spine as I struggled to reopen the door. The knob turned, but the door resisted my efforts, refusing to budge. After several futile attempts, I gave up, completed my work with the last package, and tried again. This time, the door swung open with unexpected force, as if pushed by an unseen hand, bouncing off the library's outer wall. Though puzzled and slightly annoyed, I dismissed the incident as a prankster's doing, someone who had vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared. Nonetheless, this peculiar encounter left me feeling uneasy whenever I worked in the duplicate exchange room. To dispel any further unease, I decided to play music on the radio while I worked, hoping it would deter any lurking mischief makers. Fortunately, this tactic seemed to work, and I encountered no further disturbances in the room. Despite this, The library had more surprises in store for me. As the semester neared its end, the college administration maintained an unusual tradition of keeping the library open until late hours during the last 2 weeks. This extension aimed to provide students with ample access to the library's vast resources and study materials during the critical crunch period for their projects and exams. While invaluable to the students, these extended hours presented staffing challenges, as finding volunteers to cover the graveyard shift from midnight to 3 a.m. was no small task. However, I found myself volunteering for a couple of those late-night shifts. It was during one such unforgettable night that I was destined to experience yet another inexplicable occurrence. The atmosphere was quiet and tranquil, typical of the graveyard shift. I was joined by just 2 other individuals, one managing the reference desk and the other overseeing the main checkout desk. My role at this time was to assist students in finding the materials they needed and to carry out general library maintenance tasks, including shelving books and tidying up. Around 2:15 a.m., the late-night shutdown procedures began, signalling the nearing conclusion of another day at the library. I carefully swept the first floor, checking for any abandoned materials or students who needed a gentle reminder to return to their dorms. The second floor, mostly deserted except for the student staff, awaited my presence. As I pushed the shelving cart ahead of me, I initiated my customary sweep. I checked the restroom to ensure it was empty, turned off lights in various rooms, and locked up where necessary. The study corridors were vacant, and the AV center lay still and quiet, with its equipment powered down for the night. Everything appeared to be in order. It was during this final sweep on the second floor that I first detected peculiar whispers. The faint voices seemed to whisper in hushed tones, but their origin and direction eluded me. Astonishingly, although I was certain that no one else was present on the floor, I decided to investigate. As I called out, inquiring if anyone was there, the voices ceased abruptly, leaving me in eerie silence. Slightly irritated yet curious, I searched around the shelves, but no one was to be found. Baffled and perplexed, I returned to my duties and continued the sweep, attributing the whispers to mere figments of my imagination. Upon reaching the terrace level, the whispers resurfaced, this time more distinct, as though they were struggling to reach my ears. Straining to discern the words, I began to suspect that the voices were coming from outside, from the adjacent terrace. I ventured outside, stepping cautiously onto the concrete surface. To my relief, or perhaps to my dismay, there was no one present, only a gentle autumn breeze rustling through the dried leaves scattered across the terrace. I quickly inspected the tables for any abandoned materials and hastened my return inside, locking the doors behind me. Despite my attempts to dismiss the strange episode, the whispers persisted as I resumed unloading the shelving cart. In that moment, I had reached my limit. I decided that I was absolutely done with the shift, done with the strange occurrences, and done with the unsettling whispers. It was time to retreat and seek the comfort of the familiar. I made my way back to the elevator, its dreadful screeching filling the otherwise quiet night as it carried me to the first floor. Walking briskly, I approached the girl at the main desk to recount my bizarre experience. To my surprise, both the girl at the reference desk and the girl at the main desk were far from shocked by my account. In fact, they had encountered similar unexplainable phenomena before, dismissing them as somewhat common occurrences on the lower floors at night. Even the security officer, who conducted the final walkthrough before the library's closure, expressed no surprise and acknowledged hearing unusual sounds on the lower floors from time to time. While I continued to work at the library for several more late shifts, I made sure to avoid the graveyard shift, steering clear of any mysterious whispers that might lurk in the shadows. My radio became a steadfast companion, providing me with a sense of security as I carried out my duties in the duplicate exchange room. Fortunately, the eerie voices never returned during my time there, but the terrace, once a cherished spot for relaxation and study, became tinged with a lingering sense of watchfulness. 2 years ago, I found myself in an unsettling situation while working for a security company on Christmas Eve. My duty station was a massive metal company in southeast Texas, close to my hometown of Beaumont. This facility was responsible for loading rail cars with various metals and minerals destined for destinations across the nation. Although I had volunteered for extra shifts to earn holiday pay, this particular location was unfamiliar to me. The day shift guard had failed to mention anything suspicious beyond occasional homeless individuals seeking shelter. It was strange that such a vast place had only one guard, but the security company I worked for had a less than stellar reputation. My 12-hour shift began without incident, and during breaks, I entertained myself by watching Critical Role, a Dungeons and Dragons show on YouTube. To ensure the site's safety, I conducted rounds around the entire property every hour. The night appeared routine until my 1 a.m. patrol, when I noticed a light on in a storage closet. This light had been off during my previous 7 rounds. My curiosity led me to investigate, but upon entering the closet, I found nothing unusual with the light switch. As I turned off the closet lights, I suddenly heard an AM/FM radio playing music from the nearby laboratory. This struck me as odd, as I had passed through that area multiple times earlier without hearing anything. Nevertheless, I checked the lab, turned off the radio, and conducted a thorough search, finding no signs of intruders. Despite being an army veteran and a large man, I couldn't shake the feeling of fear and dread that enveloped me. It felt as though something was trailing me. I continued my patrol, and as I entered the warehouse, the swinging doors closed behind me seemingly on their own. Faint whispers, resembling a conversation between 2 voices, reached my ears. I called out, identifying myself as the security guard, but received no response. Despite my efforts to pinpoint the source of the voices, I discovered no evidence of anyone else's presence. Frustrated and bewildered, I returned to my desk, trying to eat while reporting the strange incidents. Throughout the night, I continued my rounds, and around 4:30 a.m., I heard heavy footsteps approaching. I called out, assuming it was a company official, but the footsteps ceased, and I found no one there. This eerie occurrence compounded my growing unease. When morning arrived and the first employee entered, I recounted my unsettling experience. However, they insisted that nothing of the sort had ever occurred at the site before. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't explain the peculiar events of that night. Was it merely my imagination playing tricks on me, or had I encountered a ghostly presence on Christmas Eve? I may never truly know the answer. As I mentioned earlier, my mother also had her share of strange encounters while working at the same metal company. She had been employed there for many years and had shared numerous eerie stories about unexplained phenomena. According to her, the metal company seemed to possess an otherworldly aura, especially during late-night shifts. Over the years, she claimed to have heard unexplained footsteps echoing through empty hallways, doors mysteriously closing, and even whispers when no one was present. Some of her colleagues had similar experiences, making the site a topic of spooky conversations during breaks. One particular incident that my mother recounted occurred on a stormy night. She was working the night shift, and the torrential rain outside created an eerie ambience within the massive warehouse. As she conducted her usual rounds, checking machinery and securing doors, she heard strange sounds that seemed to blend with the pouring rain. In one corner of the warehouse, she noticed a flickering light resembling a small flame dancing in the darkness. Concerned about a potential hazard, she approached cautiously, only to find no logical source for the flickering light. There were no candles, no open flames, and no faulty electrical wires. It defied explanation. On another occasion, during a power outage caused by a severe thunderstorm, my mother and her co-workers had to use flashlights to navigate through the darkened facility. As they moved through the shadowy corridors, they heard distant laughter that sent shivers down their spines. This laughter appeared to echo from the metal walls, growing louder and more menacing, as if it were closing in on them. Just like my own experience, they couldn't locate the source of the laughter, and it eventually faded away. The atmosphere of the place seemed charged with an energy that transcended the physical realm. In the years following these eerie incidents, my mother and her co-workers often pondered the strange events they had witnessed. Some dismissed them as overactive imaginations, while others genuinely believed that the metal company was haunted. Regardless of the explanation they embraced, one thing was undeniable. The place exuded an air of mystery and unexplained phenomena that left an enduring impression on those who worked there. To this day, the metal company remains a testament to the unexplained, a place where the boundary between reality and the supernatural blurs, leaving those who step foot on its grounds with lingering questions and an eerie sense of wonder. While my mother and I may never grasp the true nature of the inexplicable events we encountered during our respective shifts, the memories of those nights continue to haunt us, much like the ghostly presence that seemed to inhabit the metal company itself. Ever since my earliest childhood days, I have been plagued by a series of unsettling nightmares that have consistently disrupted my sleep. However, around a decade ago, these disturbing dreams took a more sinister turn, evolving into intense night terrors fixated on the haunting spectre of my own demise. The unsettling pattern of these night terrors always began with what seemed like a peaceful slumber, only to be abruptly shattered by an eerie, unknown force. Upon awakening, my eyes would meet an unsettling sight. A young girl, consistently positioned precisely 5 feet away from my bed, always on the right side, near my right foot. Her presence emanated an eerie aura, and her piercing gaze bore into me with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. Her purpose or reason for being there remained a mystery, but her mere presence triggered an overwhelming, unexplainable fear I had never encountered before. The ensuing night terrors unfolded like a surreal, nightmarish film, akin to the visual distortions one might experience during an intense psychedelic trip. The terror and helplessness I felt during these episodes were beyond description, leaving me in a state of sheer dread. Now at the age of 33, having managed to break free from the grip of drug use, I had hoped these night terrors would become a thing of the past. Regrettably, that was not the case. The haunting presence of the girl persisted, a constant fixture in my terrifying dreams. She was not a mere shadowy figure, but a detailed, vivid apparition with long black hair framing her face, allowing me to discern her chilling expression. Our attire consisted of a tattered, soiled white dress, paired with worn-out white shoes. Though she seldom uttered a word, there was one instance when she opened her mouth to speak, but her words eluded my comprehension. Strangely, that was also the only time I could summon the strength to move, seeking refuge by turning on the lights and playing a Buddhist chant in a desperate attempt to ward off this ominous presence. Over the years, I've kept this haunting experience close to my chest, sharing it with only a select few. However, a recent incident, while playing online with close friends, compelled me to revisit the topic. During our gaming session, my friends inquired curiously if my young niece was at my house, as they kept hearing the laughter and chatter of a little girl in the background. Strangely, my niece was absent that day, and upon reviewing the recorded stream, I found no evidence of the mysterious voice they claimed to have heard. Adding to the complexity of this already baffling situation, I've come to realize that the girl's haunting presence is not the only supernatural entity surrounding me. There seem to be about 7 spirits in total, each with their unique characteristics and manifestations. However, none of them are as active or fear-inducing as the girl who stands 5 feet from my bed. Even more unsettling, these spirits have broken free from the confines of my home, manifesting themselves in my daily life, seemingly following my every move. To compound my bewilderment, a chilling incident occurred at my workplace, where I work in the live event industry, handling concerts and festivals. A co-worker approached me, visibly shaken, and inquired about the passengers in my car. To my horror, when I turned to look, I saw 7 people in the back seat, though I had been alone in the vehicle. The sight shook me to my core, causing me to question my sanity. Strangely, following this encounter, my co-worker resigned, unable to cope with the unexplainable and chilling phenomenon he had witnessed. Since then, these 7 spirits have become a regular part of my daily life, making appearances in various locations with increasing frequency. The question that continues to elude me is whether I am genuinely haunted, or if there is an entirely different, unfathomable explanation for these mysterious encounters. The line between reality and the supernatural blurs, leaving me grasping for answers in a realm beyond comprehension. Until clarity emerges, I remain in a state of unease and uncertainty, haunted by the persistent feeling that I am not alone in the company of these spectral beings. I'm employed as a bilingual medical video interpreter, and I provide my services from the comfort of my home. The company I work for supplies specialized tablets to hospitals and clinics for connecting with interpreters like myself. Through video calls, I can visually and audibly interact with both the medical provider and the patient, and they can see and hear me as well. It's worth mentioning that I operate from my home office, where I reside with my sister and 4 pets. However, during the incident I'm about to describe, I was home alone. Not too long ago, I had an unusual call that initially began like any other. I introduced myself to the medical provider and then to the patient, a middle-aged woman who had come in for her annual physical. Her primary care physician, a young doctor, was attending to her. Typically, the provider arranges my tablet's camera so that I can observe both of them, and this was the case during this particular call. Nevertheless, on occasion, there might be an observer in the room, such as a scribe or a medical student, and if they remain silent, I'm unaware of their presence. During this call, everything appeared normal until a few minutes into the discussion of the patient's medical history, when I detected faint whispers in the background, distinct from the patient's voice. I couldn't discern the language, and it certainly didn't belong to the patient. Assuming it was a scribe who had the habit of vocalizing while typing, I found it rather disruptive as it impeded my ability to hear the patient clearly. I had to request repetition several times. Eventually, I apologized for the interruption and explained to the doctor that the whispering was affecting my ability to interpret accurately. I asked whoever was whispering to cease. To my surprise, the doctor seemed perplexed and responded that it was just her and the patient in the room. No one else was present. Feeling somewhat awkward, I offered another apology and suggested that we continue with the interpretation. However, the whispering persisted, and I sensed the doctor becoming uneasy. She kept glancing around the room but didn't provide any further information. Once the call ended, the whispering stopped, and the rest of my day proceeded without any unusual incidents during other calls. I am quite certain that the source of the whispering did not originate from my end, but rather from within that hospital. I'll begin by stating that this is a brief anecdote from my childhood, retold to me as I grew older. I can't recall all the minor details, but I'll do my best to recount what I know. My mother worked as a physical therapist for the time I was born. Initially, she worked at a hospital, but she later transitioned to providing in-home treatment. This meant she encountered a diverse range of patients, and occasionally some rather unusual ones. One day, she went to visit a patient who lived in an isolated area. As soon as she entered the man's home, an eerie feeling washed over her. The man lay there, visibly distressed, with a pistol on the side table and a shotgun on the floor nearby. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, my mother adhered to her professional protocol and began to ask him questions. During their conversation, she inquired about the firearms and the reason for his unease. He explained that a woman would howl outside his bedroom window every night, forcing him to sleep in the living room with the guns for protection. It was an undeniably eerie situation, but my mother pressed on with her inquiries. She asked if he had sought medical help or taken any medication for these hallucinations. In response, he shared a recurring dream that deeply troubled him. In this dream, he found himself in a void, accompanied by his brother, who appeared unusually short, perhaps just a foot tall, in a blue army uniform with brown hair and piercing blue eyes. In this dream, the brother contorted his face into a bizarre, unsettling expression that defied comparison, even to the famous painting of the screaming man. This dream seemed to have a profound impact on the man's mental state. After her visit, my mother returned home, still somewhat disturbed by the encounter. However, as time passed, the memory faded into the background, and she thought little more of it. That is, until one night when something peculiar occurred. Late in the evening, my mother suddenly heard a scream emanating from the master bedroom. Alarmed, she hurried upstairs to find me in the midst of intense crying, struggling to catch my breath. When she finally comforted me, I described seeing a short man, no taller than a bottle of soda, dressed in a blue uniform, and contorting his face, just as the man in the dream had done. This was the first and thankfully the only time I encountered the enigmatic figure, whom I referred to as the man's brother. It was an eerie and unexplainable experience that left a lasting impression on both my mother and me. To the best of my knowledge, my mother never encountered another ghostly entity in her line of work after that incident. However, my sister did have her own paranormal encounter, which she might share with us another time.